Okay, welcome to video number 3 in this series on empathy. Now in this video, we're going to take a look at body language and some very simple do's and don'ts. Before we start, however, I'd like to start with a quote for you to remember from Mohsin Hamid, who was a Pakistani novelist and essayist. And his quote goes, "Empathy is about finding echoes of another person in yourself." Have a think about that. Now, this quote highlights the importance of empathy when it comes to understanding and interpreting body language. So by putting yourself in someone else's shoes and trying to feel what they're feeling, you can more easily pick up the subtle cues and signals that are conveyed through body language. Empathy allows you to read between the lines and understand the deeper meaning behind the physical gestures and expressions that people use to communicate. And so we're going to look at body language now and run through a few tips. And we're going to start with eye contact. Now, maintaining eye contact shows that you're fully present and engaged in a conversation. And it can help the other person to feel heard and understood, and could also help you to pick up non-verbal cues. Imagine trying to share a problem with another person and all they do is just gaze in another direction. The lack of eye contact is going to portray a lack of interest, and therefore it will indicate that you're not genuinely interested and certainly are not showing any empathy. Secondly, let's look at facial expressions. Using facial expressions like smiling, nodding and sort of tilting your head to the side can help convey empathy and understanding. It shows that you're actively listening and responding to the other person's words. Now, these expressions are not simply about empathy. They're considered to be good overall communication skills as well. And so that helps to make the person that you're talking to feel comfortable and encourages them to talk a bit more. Finally, let's look at mirroring. Mirroring the other person's body language can build rapport and establish a connection. So, for example, if the other person is leaning forward, you might also decide to lean forward slightly. Mirroring is often something that people who are extremely good at communicating and building instant rapport do, almost subconsciously. And you can almost consider mirroring as an empathy body language. So when you're in a social environment next, just take a few minutes to look at as many conversations that are happening around you and see if you can spot some examples of mirroring behaviour. You'll be really surprised what you see. Okay, so finally, we're going to finish this module on the power of empathy with a summary of the key do's and don'ts. So let's start first with the do's. Do listen actively. Pay attention to the other person's words, tone, and body language to show that you're fully engaged with the conversation. Secondly, validate the emotions. Acknowledge and validate the other person's feelings, even if you don't agree with their perspective. Thirdly, do use open-ended questions. Open-ended questions encourage the other person to share their thoughts and feelings more fully. Next, do practice reflective listening. Repeat back what the other person has said in your own words to demonstrate that you understand their perspective and what they've just said. And then, of course, do show empathy through your body language. Use your body language to convey empathy, such as maintaining eye contact, nodding, and using open body posture. Okay, let's move on to the don'ts. Don't interrupt. Interrupting the other person can signal that you're not really listening or don't value their input. So in a well-managed discussion where you're showing empathy to another person, you should ideally seek to get a balance in the conversation where you speak 20% of the time and the other person speaks the remaining 80% of the time. Also, don't invalidate their emotions. Now, invalidating the other person's emotions can make them feel sort of dismissed or even belittled. Remember, what's important to them may not seem important or significant to you, but to them it is. Thirdly, don't give unsolicited advice. Giving unsolicited advice can be perceived as condescending and may make the other person feel like you're not really listening to them. When giving empathy, you're showing understanding, and in most situations, that's all that's needed. If someone asks for advice, then feel free to give them yours. But ideally, ask them what they think first and see if you can encourage the solutions to the area of concern that's weighing on them to come from them. Don't be judgmental. Being judgmental can cause the other person to shut down or feel defensive, which can hinder effective communication. If you think about it, if you have a different perspective to the other person, then there's a chance that you'll not hit the mark in judging the issue that they're facing. So the safe territory here is always to actively listen and show empathy without judgments. And then finally, don't rush the conversation. Rushing the conversation can signal that you're not really investing in the other person's well-being or concerns. So take the time to listen and engage in a meaningful conversation. Great empathy givers give plenty of time to allow the conversations to reach their natural ending. Now, on the subject of natural endings, to finish with, I've got a nice little acronym for empathy, which is going to hopefully help you to remember all the key points of this module. Now, if you manage to learn these, you'll be really on your way to having the skill and confidence to use empathy to help yourself and others in many situations and in many different ways. So, let's start with our acronym. The E for empathy stands for engage in active listening. The M stands for mirror the other person's body language. P is for practice reflective listening. A is ask open-ended questions. T is take the time to understand the other person's perspective. H, hold back judgments and assumptions. And finally, the Y is yield the floor and let the other person speak. So finally, remember, practicing empathy takes time and effort, but it can have a significant impact on your relationships and your ability to connect with others. So by incorporating these techniques that we've just talked about into your daily interactions, you can become a more empathetic person and improve your relationships with those people around you. Okay, that's it. I hope you found this module useful and informative. Good luck practicing your empathy with others, and I'll see you soon for the next Freedom Learning Training module. Bye for now.